Hey everyone, welcome back to So Arizona. I am back to share another week with you of what I'm planting in my garden. I did one of these videos last week and everybody seemed to be pretty positive and said, yes, you want to have me keep sharing what I'm planting in my garden so that you can follow along in yours. And I know that it is something that is really tricky about planting gardens here in southern Arizona. It's really hard to figure out when to plant what. And if you miss the window and you're too late, sometimes things don't work out super well. So I have a list of things that I want to be planting in my garden today, and I'm going to share that with you, but I've got a list. And so this morning I was actually just walking around and dreaming about what I want to put where, and in my mind are some of the lessons that I learned last year about what to combine in each bed. And I had, for the most part, success last year, but I did have one bed, it's this one right behind me, that got a little crazy, and I planted too many big things in here. So this year I'm going to be a little bit more conservative about what to combine in this bed. So let's go check it out. If you watch very many of my videos, then you would know that I really like to mix it up. I don't like to plant just the same thing in each bed. I like providing vegetables and flowers, plants of different heights, root vegetables, leafing vegetables, all kinds of things in all of my beds, just like Mother Nature does. It's called a polyculture, and I think that it does much better for the beneficial insects and also pest control. But last year I may have gotten a little bit crazy. I put too many big things in my first long bed that's closest to the house. I had a squash vine in here that really took over, and it was a bully. It did not grow well in this bed with other things, and it ended up shading things out. I wasn't able to get in and harvest things, and so it was a bit of a mess. So I won't be doing that again. With that being said, I have a better plan this year for what I'm going to combine in this bed. So if you notice, this bed has frost cloth on it once again. That is for two reasons. One is that we had 3 nights that were very close to freezing, and the other is that I had just set out some new peppers and tomato plants and I wanted to harden them off well. And I will show you, I did not cover this because I wasn't too worried about it. This is a tomato plant that I sneaked into my fava beans, but you can see that it did get a little bit singed here, actually a lot singed on this side, but that's all right because this will totally rebound. For the most part, the base of the plant and the bottom of the leaves are okay, so even though it may look a little bit ugly for a while, it's going to make a full recovery. I didn't want that to happen with all of my plants, so I do have quite a bit of row cover up, even over here too. So this should be the last night that I have to do that. I live about an hour south of Tucson in Tubac, and our last frost date is actually April 13th, which is about a month later than in Tucson, which is mid-March. I'll just show you this bed since the cover's blown off and you can see it a little bit better. Down the middle, I have pepper plants planted. They're itty bitty right now, so it might be hard to see. On this side, I have got alternating tomatoes that I've started. And then on this side, what I'm planning to do is I have a few watermelons planted, and I'm going to sow some okra seeds today, which I'm really excited about. I'm going to be using okra plants to shade some of my other plants like peppers. Peppers will actually appreciate a little bit of shade, a little row cover. When I say shade, I just mean maybe a shade cloth or a row cover during the hottest part of the summer. I think that they tend to do much better that way. Otherwise, they can get sunburned, the fruits can get sunburned, and they can really struggle. So I will cover my tomatoes and my peppers with shade cloth, and that seems a little bit counterintuitive since these are heat-loving plants, but there is a limit to their heat tolerance. So I find that planting sunflowers or amaranth or corn or okra next to them is a great way to provide natural shade and also get some food from it and not have to spend money on the shade cloth. So I am going to be locating the okra very close to the peppers so that okra can help just break up the sun. If you've ever seen an okra plant, then you know that the okra has, very notched leaves, and so it won't be breaking up all of the sun. The peppers won't do well in deep shade for sure, but it will just provide dappled light and just break up that sunlight just enough. I will have tomatoes peppers, and then I'm going to have okra here. But along the bottom, just as a ground cover, I'm going to be planting watermelons. I actually sowed my watermelon seeds last week. They haven't come up yet because it's been a little bit chilly, but they will be making an appearance soon. I'm going to be planting a few more of those yellow watermelons that I had last year. They were amazing, probably the best melons that I've ever had. And then I'm also going to be planting some more bush beans and some pole beans today. So in my garlic bed last year, I put a trellis along one side, and that worked really nicely. So I'll probably be doing that again. So let me show you that. My garlic bed, which I have talked about so much, those nasturtiums, let's just admire those for a minute. Aren't those lovely? I have been harvesting those like crazy and dehydrating them. I'll have a video coming out hopefully by the end of the week talking about what I do with those, because I've gotten a lot of questions. But on this end, I will be putting in a trellis so that I can grow some pole beans on this side. And then what I'm going to do with the rest of this bed is plant corn rows. So alternating rows of corn, and then in between those I'll leave enough space, and I'm going to plant bush beans. You'll have to pardon our shed rebuild mess. If you're noticing a bunch of junk behind you, I mentioned this in the last video. That's because we've got everything taken out of the shed. The shed is dismantled, so there is stuff everywhere right now. So I do apologize for the mess. I have been making a real effort at planting more flowers. Now I planted quite a few flowers last year, but I am leveling it up this year. And so all along the edges of my garden, I have fruit trees. So I've got this pear tree, and next to it I've got a plum tree, and then along the back I have some itty bitty figs. Most of them are itty bitty. I have two bigger trees, but for the most part they're small. And all along the base of these I have planted 4 o'clocks, marigolds, calendula, things like that, just to try to make it more beautiful and also to be nice to the pollinators, because I really want them to come to my garden and do all of the good work. I'm doing that to support all of the beneficial insects and the pollinators, and also just to make it more beautiful, because who doesn't like more color and more butterflies? Speaking of flowers, I'm also adding zinnias to every single one of my beds. So I have a lot of different varieties of zinnias. What I did is put them in a container, shake it all up so that I mixed up all of the seeds, because they are all relatively the same height at maturity. I'm adding those to the ends or to the edges of beds to draw in the pollinators, you see a theme, and to add beauty to the garden, because it was such a joy last year to walk through the garden and have all of the butterflies all around me, and to hear the hum of the bees, and to feel like I was providing for them as they were doing good work for me. I would highly encourage you to add flowers to your garden wherever you can. Because of that reason, as you're doing so, try to include as many different bloom shapes as you can. I think there are 9 different bloom shapes. So pollinators come in many different shapes and sizes. They have different mouth parts. They have, in the case of bees, different lengths of tongues. Depending on the pollinator, it can really limit what flower they feed from. So I like to have as large as sunflowers and everything in between. I like to have flat umbel flowers like carrots and dara, and I like to have tube-shaped flowers like tobacco. And that way I know that I am providing a buffet for all of the different beneficial insects so that everyone has something to eat. This circular stock tank had all of that amazing spinach growing in it all winter long, and it was so prolific, and I had such a huge harvest. I actually did a short video talking about replanting this bed, and I showed the wheelbarrow full of that spinach. So if you haven't checked that out, I will link it below. But I planted tomatoes and I planted basil and beans in this bed. So right now I only have 4 tomatoes in here, and it probably looks like there's just not very much, but these will get much bigger. I have a Berry's Crazy Cherry. I have 2 Juliettes, which are aroma style. And then I have this little mystery to me tomato. It came in a sample pack and it just said yellow bush cherry. So we'll see how that goes. I've planted some sunflowers in the middle to provide some shade, and I always like to plant my sunflower seeds at the same time as my tomatoes. Around the sides, I have alternated a type of basil that's new to me this year. It's called window box mini basil, and those will only get to be 8 to 10 inches tall. Apparently they're great for pots, for windowsills, but I thought since I'm using dwarfed style tomatoes here, or at least patio style tomatoes, that I could just grow little mounds of basil alternating around this tub. So we'll see how that is. That's a new variety for me. And then the other thing I was alternating is also new to me. This is a container friendly bush green bean, and that is called French mascot, I think. I do not speak French, so I may be butchering that out. I have 4 tomatoes, I have sunflowers, and then I have alternating beans, basil, bean, basil. So that is what I've got in this tub now. In this little corner next to my back door, I have one more stock tank that has my strawberries, and I've added 4 different pots to it. So let me show you that now. These are just some pots that I had. I alternated them. So I've got a terracotta and then a glazed one, and then another terracotta and another glazed one. So in this one, I have planted a very container friendly zucchini. It's called an ostia zucchini. It's supposed to be very compact and prolific. Next to that, I have a bush tomato, and then I have planted a new variety for me, which I'm incredibly excited about, and that is a dwarf runner bean. They're called a Hestia dwarf runner bean. So those should just fill up the pot and be beautiful. And then over here, a head start from all the others is a mixture of violas, and I've got some peppermint here. And in there somewhere I have some thyme, although I think I may have to rescue it because it's being completely overrun. And then I have a volunteer watermelon of all things. I may try to take that out and put it in a different spot because I just don't think the roots are going to be happy in there, but we will see. So all of these are in this little corner next to my strawberry plants, and these are alpine strawberries, so they're very small, very petite little fruits, but incredibly flavorful, and there are tons of fruits and flowers on there. Let me go to the other side to show you. So you can see on the other side these little fruits, and that's about as big as they get, but they are incredibly sweet, like little candy bombs for sure. And I have yellow and red ones in here. So those are on one half of the bed. I started these plants from seeds last spring, and they lived through the winter barely, and they returned, and they are so much bigger this year and very productive. But I've also got some little dwarf tomatoes in here that will probably grow to be about the same height, but hopefully the plan is that those will take over this half of the stock tank. I could not finish this video without showing you these nasturtiums. They have just gotten so huge, and they are bringing me so much joy to watch and look at all of the different insects that have been visiting them. So many different ones, but I've mixed in a lot of different colors, from the pale yellow to this really beautiful striped orange color. On the other side, I have some orange and different colored yellow ones, and they are just beautiful right now. And I know since we're going to be in the 90s this week, that these will probably fizzle out very quickly. So I am coming out here every morning and just soaking up all of the color while I can. I actually picked a bouquet just this morning to take to a neighbor, and that was a lot of fun, just to run around the yard and find whatever flowers were blooming and share those with them. I am pretty excited about a lot of the seeds that I'm sowing today, because a lot of them are seeds that I saved from last year. And so it's always really nice to be able to save a few bucks and save your own seeds, but also they are going to perform probably better in the little microclimate in your yard if you choose them from a plant that performed well last year and you saved the seeds from it. It's going to do well this year too. The watermelon and the squash seeds that I planted are seeds that I saved from last year. There are some of the flower seeds that I am planting that I saved from last year, a few of the tomatoes, and a couple of the peppers. So I would say I'm doing pretty well. Since I'm going with a different variety of cowpea, I'm not going to be using the seeds that I saved for those last year, but I feel like I'm off to a pretty good start. And I also saved okra seeds, but since I'm trying a few different varieties, then I'm just not going to use the seeds that I saved for those either. After I finish planting my okra and my zucchini, I'm going to be planting some amaranth and some sunflowers just here and there around the garden. And I've also got some amaranth and marigolds and some other exciting things that are started in my plug trays in the house. So I'm going to take you in there next and show you what those look like. I'm here in front of my seed starting setup, and I want to show you the seedling trays that I have. These are plug trays, which means that the little squares that you put the soil and the seed into are very, very small. They're meant to produce a lot of seedlings, and then you can put them out when they're still pretty small, or you can up pot them because the root base is going to be much smaller than in a typical seedling tray. So I've got quite a few bachelor's buttons here. And then I also have some dahlias. So you can see these guys peeking out over here with a more jagged leaf. I also have some Dara, and I've got some Nigella here. But over here, a lot of these things have not germinated yet, but I do have these little guys that are looking pretty fancy, and these are a white yarrow. And I actually got these seeds from the seed library in Pima County for free. So my hope is that I can grow these and then give seeds back to them this year. I'm really excited about these seedling trays. My favorite color is orange, which I think is kind of weird, but it is. And I have a ton of marigolds in these seedling trays, all different kinds. And I really like the really small, delicate ones, the little gems, and some of the varieties that are very fine leafed and have really small blooms. But I have a ton of different varieties this year that are new to me. But I also have probably 10 different varieties of amaranth, and I love amaranth for the garden. You can eat the greens while they're young and tender as you would spinach, and they're really tasty. And then they provide beautiful blooms that will give you grain if you have the patience to harvest it because it's so tiny. But really, I do it for the pollinators and for the beautiful splashes of color, and because amaranth will grow really tall, providing shade for other plants that I plant underneath them. Some of the varieties that I planted are not as tall. They're more of a decorative version, but they are just beautiful nonetheless, and they do so well in the heat. I don't often talk to you all up in my front courtyard, but it was getting kind of hot out there, and so I thought I would take a little break in the shade underneath this tree, and I want to tell you about the okra that I'm planting. So let's take a look at that. I have 5 different kinds of okra that I am planting this year, and the first one was given to me by a friend. His mother actually did this artwork, which is really, really cool. From Black Mountain College is where these seeds came from, and this is a red burgundy okra, and so I love these. I have grown them in the past, but since the seed packet is so special, that's going to make it even more fun this year. This burgundy okra has, as the name would imply, a beautiful red pod. And then these are going to be fun. I'm going to be putting these in a couple of the beds where I don't have a lot of space because these are a dwarf variety. I have not tried these before. These are the Okra Dwarf Long Pod Green, and I got these from Livingston. I was at a feed store when I was out in Wilcox just checking out the area, and I found these at one of the feed stores there. So these are new to me. The plant is supposed to be 24 to 30 inches tall at maturity. So if you're growing in a small space, these might be a really great option to just put into a flower bed or a raised bed or a container of some sort. Or if you're trying to maximize a smaller growing space, these might be a good option, so I'll let you know what I think of them. Next, I have the Jing Orange Okra. I got these from Baker Creek. These are also new to me this year, so I'm excited about trying them. These are a full-size okra plant, and they will give you an orange pod. It's an Asian variety, so this is going to be really fun to try. I just love adding color to the garden. The next one is Beck's Gardenville. This is from Native Seeds, and I have tried this before. These give you nice chunky pods all up and down the stem. Really productive variety, great in the heat. I'd highly recommend that one. Those are green pods. And then this one is also new to me. This is the Heavy Hitter from Baker Creek. They actually sent me these seeds for free last year, but I did not have a chance to plant them, so I'm going to try them this year to try. This is a Heavy Hitter, and I don't know if you can see on this picture, these are just loaded down with really big pods, and the description says The most productive okra we have ever seen. So that sounds great to me because I do like having okra in the summertime. I am not going to be saving any seeds from these this year because I'm planting so many different varieties, and honestly I just don't want to be bothered with trying to plant them far enough apart so that they don't mix. But if you do plant okra and you let the pod dry on the plant, you will get something that looks like this and sounds like this, because they are full of seeds. And a lot of times if you let these stay on, the little pod will open up kind of like a star and let all of those small round black seeds just roll out onto the ground. You can cut the stem longer and you can add these to little arrangements. I think they're kind of cool looking, very earthy and very rustic. Or you can save the seeds to plant for the next year. If you've only got one variety or you've got them isolated far enough apart, then you could probably just save your seeds. But I think these pods are really cool, and this is one that I saved from last year from my garden just so that I could share it with you. But very cool. Look at that. Okra is a really cool plant. I was reading somewhere last year that you can eat the leaves when they're very young and tender. I have not tried that, so do not take my word for it because I cannot recommend whether or not it's tasty. People will actually grind up the seeds to use for flour or for thickening. So it's a really neat plant. There's all kinds of different options for it. But if you are looking for another tall plant that can provide dappled shade for some of your other plants and you don't want to or don't have the budget for shade cloth, you could try growing okra and see if you like it. I like eating okra the old-fashioned way. I like to pick the pods when they're young and tender, slice them up, toss them in a little bit of flour, cornmeal, a little dash of cayenne for some kick, and some salt and pepper, and I will just fry it in a cast iron skillet. They're also pretty good roasted too. If you wanted to go a little lower fat, you could put it in an air fryer, spritz it with a little bit of olive oil maybe, and some salt and pepper or whatever seasoning. They're pretty tasty that way too. I hope all of this is helpful for you and that you are right on schedule with your garden and that it is turning out beautifully so far. I'm Kara from Arizona. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Until next time, happy gardening.